The invitation arrived on cream-colored paper, so thick I could have built a house with it. The Ashworth family cordially invites you to celebrate the engagement of James Ashworth and Emily Wilson. My hands trembled as I read those words for the third time. After 30 years of scrubbing floors at Lincoln High School, washing dishes until my knuckles cracked, and raising my daughter alone, I was being invited to Beverly Hills. Not to clean their bathrooms or serve their food, to be their guest. If you're listening to this story, thank you for being here. This is about how a 58-year-old janitor from East LA discovered that sometimes the person who changes your life is sitting right next to you in a broken-down Corolla on the side of the freeway. Let me back up. My name is Ellen Wilson, and I've spent most of my adult life invisible. Not literally, I'm 5'2" and loud enough to wake the dead when I need to be. But invisible in the way that working people are invisible to those who matter. The way women with calloused hands are invisible to people who have never had to choose between paying the electric bill and buying groceries. For 30 years, I mopped hallways while teenagers complained about their lives. I cleaned classrooms where teachers discussed Shakespeare and calculus, subjects I'd never had the chance to study because I was working 2 jobs by the time I was 16. I listened to guidance counselors talk about college prep programs while I emptied their trash cans. Knowing my own daughter would need every scholarship and loan available to make her dreams come true, Emily was my miracle. While I was scrubbing bathroom tiles at 5 a.m., she was studying by lamplight in our tiny apartment. While I was picking up shifts at the diner on weekends, she was tutoring other kids to earn money for school supplies. She graduated valedictorian from Lincoln High, the same school where I pushed a mop bucket through those hallways every day. 4 years at UCLA on scholarships, 3 years at Stanford Law. Now at 28. She was a junior partner at a prestigious firm downtown, living in a world I could only glimpse from the outside. But the world had grown distant between us. Not in love, never in love, but in understanding. Emily spoke about cases and clients, about networking events and wine tastings. I spoke about broken floor buffers and students who reminded me of her at that age. We loved each other fiercely, but increasingly. We lived in different universes. Then she called me 3 months ago with news that stopped my world. "Mom, I'm engaged." I dropped the phone, literally dropped it, watching it clatter across my kitchen floor while I processed those words. My baby was getting married, and this was how I found out. Engaged. To whom? When did this happen? Why didn't you tell me you were even dating someone seriously? His name is James Ashworth. We've been together for 2 years, but things got serious recently. I wanted to tell you in person. But he proposed last weekend at his family's house in Malibu, and I just couldn't wait. Ashworth. Even I knew that name. Real estate empire, political connections. The kind of family that appeared in society pages and charity auction catalogs. "Mom, are you there?" "I'm here, honey. I'm just surprised. I know it's sudden, but James's family wants to meet you. They're having a garden party next Saturday to celebrate our engagement. It's at their house in Beverly Hills. They specifically asked me to invite you. Specifically asked. As if they'd been discussing whether the janitor's daughter's mother was worthy of their acknowledgement. "Of course I'll come," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "What should I wear?" There was a pause. "Maybe something elegant. It's going to be pretty formal. Lots of James's family friends, some business associates. I didn't know. That was the problem." After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the phone. My daughter was marrying into a family that could buy and sell my entire neighborhood without checking their bank balance. What did I possibly have to offer these people? But Emily needed me there. After all the sacrifices, All the nights I fell asleep at the kitchen table after double shifts so she could have a future different from mine. She needed her mother at the most important moment of her life. The next week was a blur of preparation that felt like studying for a test I'd never pass. I went to 3 different stores before finding a dress that looked expensive but cost less than a week's groceries. Navy blue with small flowers, modest but pretty. The saleswoman assured me it was appropriate for upscale garden parties. I practiced conversations in my bathroom mirror. How to pronounce hors d'oeuvres. How to hold a champagne glass without looking like I'd never seen one before. How to answer when people asked what I did for a living without apologizing for it. I work in education, I practiced saying. I've been at Lincoln High for 30 years. Technically true, even if I'd been cleaning it rather than teaching in it. Friday night, I called Emily to confirm details. The party starts at 2 p.m., she said. Just drive up to the house, there'll be valet parking. Valet parking. People would take my beat-up Toyota and judge me before I even walked through the door. Mom, you sound nervous. I want to make a good impression for you, honey. You will. Just be yourself. James is excited to meet you, and his family is very welcoming. Very welcoming to a woman who'd spent 3 decades scrubbing floors. I doubted it, but I kept that thought to myself. Saturday morning arrived gray and overcast, unusual for Lowe's Angels in April. I dressed carefully, checking my reflection multiple times. The navy dress looked respectable. My shoes were comfortable but presentable. I'd gotten my hair done at the local salon, where Mary had worked miracles with highlights and styling. Where are you off to, all dressed up? She'd asked while blow-drying my hair. To meet my future son-in-law's family. Rich people in Beverly Hills. Oh, Ellen, remember who you are. You raised a brilliant daughter who became a lawyer. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Easy for her to say. Mary hadn't spent her adult life cleaning up after other people's children. I left my apartment at noon, giving myself plenty of time for the drive from East LA to Beverly Hills. Traffic was lighter than expected, and I was making good time until somewhere around Century City. When my car started making a sound like a dying cat, the temperature gauge was climbing toward red. I managed to pull over to the shoulder of the 405 freeway just as steam began pouring from under the hood. I sat there in my navy dress with the small flowers, watching expensive cars zoom past, and felt tears of frustration building behind my eyes. After all this preparation, all this worry, I was going to miss Emily's engagement party because my 20-year-old Toyota had finally given up. I called Emily, but it went straight to voicemail. She was probably getting ready. Surrounded by hairstylists and makeup artists like women in movies. I called AAA, but they said it would be at least 2 hours before a tow truck could reach me. 2 hours. The party would be half over. I was sitting there calculating whether I could afford an Uber from the freeway to Beverly Hills when an older woman in a silver Mercedes pulled up behind me. She was probably in her 70s, with perfectly styled silver hair and the kind of understated elegance that spoke of real money. She wore a simple blue linen dress that probably cost more than I made in a month. But her face was kind as she approached my window. "Are you having car trouble? Engine overheated," I said, embarrassed to be seen in my distress by this obviously wealthy woman. I called for help. "But they say it'll be hours. Where are you headed? Maybe I can give you a ride." I hesitated. This woman was clearly upper class, probably lived in the same world I was trying to enter. What would she think when I told her I was a janitor going to a party in Beverly Hills? "Beverly Hills," I said finally. "My daughter's engagement party." Her face lit up. "How wonderful. A celebration." "I'm headed that direction myself, visiting friends in Brentwood. Please, let me drive you. You can't miss your daughter's special day because of car trouble. Something in her tone made the offer feel genuine rather than pitying. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. Nonsense. I'm Grace, she said, extending a manicured hand. Ellen. I grabbed my purse and the small gift I'd bought for Emily and James. Crystal candlesticks from Macy's that had cost more than I wanted to think about, and got into the most luxurious car I'd ever seen. The leather seats were softer than my bed. The dashboard looked like something from a spaceship. Grace handled the car with the ease of someone who'd been driving expensive vehicles her entire life. Tell me about your daughter, she said as we merged back into traffic. Emily. She's 28, a lawyer. She's marrying a man named James. His family is, well, they have money. Grace glanced at me with understanding eyes. And you're nervous about meeting them. It wasn't a question. Somehow, this elegant stranger had seen right through me. I've never been around people like that, I admitted. I work at a high school. Maintenance. I raised Emily alone, and she's the first person in our family to go to college, let alone law school. I just want to make a good impression for her sake. What kind of impression do you think they want you to make? The question surprised me. I don't know. That I'm not an embarrassment, I guess. That I'm worthy of being their son's mother-in-law. Grace was quiet for a moment, navigating the traffic with practiced ease. May I tell you something, Ellen? I'm 73 years old. I've met a lot of people with money, and I've learned that wealth doesn't determine worth. The fact that you raised a daughter who became a successful lawyer while working maintenance speaks to your character more than any expensive dress or fancy car ever could. You're kind to say that. I'm not being kind. I'm being truthful. She paused. I lost my husband 6 months ago. We were married for 48 years, and suddenly I was alone for the first time since I was 22. My adult children have been helpful. They've arranged everything for me, chosen my financial advisor, selected my social activities, decided what's appropriate for a woman my age. There was something in her voice that made me look at her more closely. That sounds lonely. It is. They mean well, but they see me as a fragile old woman who needs to be managed rather than a person with her own thoughts and feelings. Sometimes I feel invisible in my own life. I understand that feeling. Do you? I've been invisible for 30 years, to the teachers whose classrooms I cleaned, to the parents who dropped their kids off at school, to everyone except Emily. People look through me like I'm not there. Grace nodded slowly. Perhaps that's why we were meant to meet today. Two invisible women helping each other be seen. The rest of the drive passed quickly. Grace asked about Emily's childhood, and I found myself sharing stories I rarely told anyone. How Emily used to do homework at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner after my first shift. Before I left for my second job. How she won the science fair 3 years in a row with projects we built together from recycled materials. How she cried when she got into Stanford Law because she was afraid of leaving me behind. She sounds remarkable, Grace said, and she didn't become remarkable by accident. She had a mother who sacrificed everything to give her opportunities. I just did what any mother would do. No, Ellen, you did what an extraordinary mother would do. There's a difference. We were winding through the hills of Beverly Hills now, passing houses that looked like museums. Grace seemed to know the area well, taking shortcuts I never would have found. The Ashworth house is just up here. She said, I actually know the family a little. Business connections over the years. What are they like? Grace considered this. Traditional, conservative. They value appearance and social standing. But James is a good young man. If your daughter loves him, he must have qualities that go beyond his family's money. What should I do if I say the wrong thing? If I embarrass Emily? Be yourself, Ellen. Be the woman who raised an extraordinary daughter. That's all anyone can ask of you. We pulled up to a house that looked like something from a Hollywood movie. sprawling white colonial with perfectly manicured gardens and a circular driveway filled with luxury cars. Young men in white shirts were taking keys from arriving guests. And I could see elegantly dressed people mingling on a vast lawn behind the house. "This is it," Grace said, but she made no move to leave. "Ellen, before you go in there, remember something. You belong here. Not because of who they are, but because of who you are. You're Emily's mother. You're the woman who made her success possible. Hold your head up." I thanked her, gathered my courage, and walked toward the most intimidating house I'd ever seen. The valet barely glanced at me as I approached the entrance. "Guest of the family," I said, trying to sound like I belonged. The party was in full swing in the backyard. White tents, elegant flowers, servers circulating with champagne and delicate appetizers. Everything was perfect, beautiful, and completely foreign to my world. I spotted Emily immediately. She was radiant in a flowing cream dress, her long hair swept into an elegant updo, surrounded by people who looked like they'd stepped from magazine pages. Next to her stood a tall, handsome young man with kind eyes who had to be James. My daughter saw me and her face lit up. "Mom," she hurried over, bringing James with her. I was getting worried. "What happened to your car?" "It broke down on the freeway, but a very kind woman gave me a ride." "Mom, this is James." "James, my mother, Ellen." James extended his hand with a warm smile. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm so happy to finally meet you. Emily talks about you constantly. Thank you for including me today. Your home is beautiful. Wait until you meet my family. They're excited to meet the woman who raised this amazing person." He gestured to Emily with obvious affection. Before I could respond, an older woman approached us. She was probably in her 60s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and the kind of outfit that probably cost more than my car. Her smile seemed genuine, but I sensed evaluation behind her eyes. "You must be Ellen," she said. "I'm Patricia Ashworth, James's mother. We're so pleased you could join us. Thank you for having me. Your party is lovely. Well, we wanted to do something special for these two. Come, let me introduce you to some people." The next hour was a blur of names and faces. James's father, Robert, was polite but distant. James's sister, Caroline, made polite conversation, but kept glancing around as if looking for someone more interesting to talk to. Various aunts, uncles, and family friends smiled and nodded and asked polite questions about my work in education. I managed to hold my own in conversations, though I felt constantly like I was performing in a play where I didn't know my lines. People were pleasant enough, but I sensed undercurrents I couldn't quite read. It was during a lull in conversation, while Emily and James were making rounds with other guests, that I noticed one of the servers struggling with a heavy tray near the pool area. She was young, probably college age, trying to balance champagne glasses while navigating around party guests who barely seemed to notice her existence. I watched as one of the male guests, already several drinks in, bumped into her, causing several glasses to slip. Instead of apologizing, he turned and snapped at her in front of a small group of people. "Watch where you're going. These are expensive suits." The young woman's face flushed with embarrassment as she apologized profusely, kneeling to clean up the broken glass while party guests looked on with mild annoyance at the disruption. Something in me snapped. I walked over and knelt down beside her. "Here, let me help," I said. She looked up, surprised to see a guest helping her. "Oh no, ma'am, you'll ruin your dress. It's just a dress," I replied, continuing to pick up pieces of glass. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine, thank you." The drunk guest was still standing there, making irritated comments about the help these days to his friends. I stood up, faced him directly, and in my clearest English said, "Accidents happen." She apologized. "Maybe you could apologize too, since you're the one who bumped into her." The man looked shocked that a guest was confronting him. "Excuse me." "You heard me. You bumped into her, caused her to drop the tray, and then blamed her. That's not right." A small crowd was gathering, including some of the Ashworth family members. I could see Patricia Ashworth approaching with a concerned expression, probably worried about the scene I was causing. "Mom." Emily appeared at my elbow, her voice carefully controlled. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, honey. I was just helping this young woman clean up after this gentleman accidentally bumped into her." The emphasis on accidentally, and gentleman wasn't lost on anyone listening. The drunk man muttered something and wandered away, clearly not wanting to continue the confrontation. Emily helped me to my feet, her face unreadable. "Maybe we should get you some champagne," she suggested, clearly trying to redirect attention away from what had just happened. But as we moved away from the scene, I caught sight of someone I hadn't expected to see. Grace, the woman who had given me a ride, was standing near the main tent watching everything with intense interest. She was dressed more formally now, in an elegant gray dress with pearls, and she was clearly a guest at the party. Not someone visiting friends in Brentwood, as she'd told me. Our eyes met across the crowd, and she smiled slightly before disappearing back into the group of guests. Who was Grace? And why had she lied about where she was going? Before I could process this development further, Patricia Ashworth appeared at my side. "Ellen, that was very kind of you to help Mary," she said carefully. "But in the future, perhaps it's best to let the catering staff handle their own situations." The message was clear. Guests didn't interact with the help, even to be kind. "Of course," I said. But I felt my face flush with embarrassment. I'd violated some unspoken rule about appropriate behavior at elegant parties. Emily looked mortified. James appeared genuinely torn between defending me and keeping peace with his family. The rest of the party passed in a haze of polite conversation and careful navigation of social landmines I hadn't even known existed. I smiled, made appropriate responses, and tried to be invisible again. As the afternoon wound down and guests began to leave, Emily found me sitting alone at one of the cocktail tables. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Honey, just tired." She sat down beside me, and for a moment we were quiet together. "I'm proud of you," she said finally. "Proud? I caused a scene. I embarrassed you in front of James's family. You stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for herself. You did what was right, even when it was uncomfortable. That's who you are, and I love you for it." I looked at my beautiful, successful daughter and felt a surge of love so strong it almost took my breath away. "I just want to fit into your new life." "Mom, I don't want you to fit in. I want you to be you. James loves me partly because of how you raised me. If his family can't see how wonderful you are, that's their loss." Before I could respond, James approached with someone I recognized, Grace, the mysterious woman who had given me a ride. "Mom, Mrs. Wilson," James said, "I'd like you both to meet my grandmother, Margaret Ashworth." I felt the world tilt slightly. Grace smiled at my shock. "Hello again, Ellen," she said warmly. Emily looked confused. "Again? Your mother and I met earlier today," Margaret Grace explained. "She helped me with a small problem, and we had the most wonderful conversation." I was still processing the deception. The woman who had given me a ride, who had listened to my fears and insecurities about meeting the Ashworth family, was the Ashworth family matriarch. "I don't understand," Emily said. Margaret looked at me with those kind eyes I remembered from the car. "Ellen, would you mind if I shared our story?" Still shocked, I nodded. Margaret turned to James and Emily. "I was out this afternoon when my car broke down. Ellen stopped to help a complete stranger, even though she was dressed for an important event, and helping me would make her late. She was kind, resourceful, and completely genuine. She paused, looking around at the remaining family members who had gathered to listen. During our drive here, she told me about raising Emily alone, about working multiple jobs to pay for her education, about her fears of not being good enough for this family. She was honest, humble, and clearly devoted to her daughter's happiness above her own comfort. Patricia Ashworth was listening with a carefully neutral expression. Then I watched her at the party, Margaret continued. She was polite, gracious, and tried to fit in despite being in an unfamiliar environment. But when she saw someone being treated unfairly, she didn't hesitate to intervene. She showed more character in that moment than many people show in a lifetime. She turned to address me directly. Ellen, you asked me in the car what kind of impression James's family wanted you to make. I'll tell you now, they wanted you to make the impression of someone worthy of their son. Instead, you made the impression of someone they should be worthy of. The silence that followed was deafening. Robert Ashworth cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mother, perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, Robert. I think we should discuss this right here, right now. Margaret's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. This family has spent too much time worrying about appearances and social standing, and not enough time thinking about character and values. She looked around at the assembled Ashworths. Ellen Wilson raised a daughter who graduated from Stanford Law School while working as a janitor. She sacrificed everything for Emily's education and success. She drives across town in a broken-down car to celebrate her daughter's engagement with people who clearly consider themselves her superiors. And when she sees someone being mistreated, she stands up for them regardless of social consequences. Margaret's voice grew stronger. That's exactly the kind of person I want welcoming into this family. The question isn't whether Ellen is good enough for us. The question is whether we're good enough for her. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Patricia and Robert looked uncomfortable. Caroline seemed shocked, but James was smiling. Grandmother's right, he said, moving to stand beside Emily. Mrs. Wilson, I hope you know how much I respect you. Emily is the woman she is because of the mother you were. Any family would be lucky to have you. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Mom, I'm sorry if anyone made you feel unwelcome. You're the strongest, most loving person I know. Margaret, I was still getting used to thinking of her as Margaret rather than Grace, approached me. Ellen, I have a proposition for you. Here it comes, I thought. The polite dismissal. The gentle suggestion that maybe this marriage wasn't meant to be. I've been looking for someone to help me with a project. I want to start a foundation that provides educational support for working families, scholarships, tutoring, college preparation programs. I need someone who understands the challenges these families face. Someone with integrity and passion for helping others succeed. I stared at her, not sure I was hearing correctly. I'd like to offer you a position as program director. The salary would be $65,000 a year to start. With full benefits, you'd be working with schools, families, and community organizations to identify students who need support and create programs to help them succeed. I don't have experience in that kind of work. You have exactly the right experience. You've lived it. You understand what these families need because you've been there yourself. And today you showed me you have the courage to stand up for what's right. Even when it's difficult, I looked around at the faces surrounding us. Emily was crying openly now. James looked proud. Patricia and Robert seemed stunned but not entirely displeased. Caroline appeared to be reevaluating everything she'd assumed about me. Would you consider it? Margaret asked. I thought about 30 years of mopping floors, of feeling invisible, of watching other people's children get opportunities I could only dream of for Emily. I thought about the young server I'd helped today and all the other young people who needed someone to believe in them. Yes, I said I'd be honored. The party was officially over, but somehow it felt like something important was just beginning. As guests departed and the catering staff cleaned up, Margaret asked me to stay behind for a few minutes. "There's something else I want to tell you," she said when we were alone except for Emily and James. I wasn't entirely truthful about how we met today. My heart sank. Had this all been some elaborate test? "My car didn't break down by accident," she continued. "I was on my way to this party when I saw you pulled over on the freeway. I recognized you from the photos James has shown me. Emily talks about you constantly, and James wanted me to understand how important you are to her." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I was curious about the woman who had raised someone James loved so much, so I pulled over to see if you needed help. But I didn't tell you who I was because I wanted to meet the real Ellen Wilson. Not the version you thought I wanted to see, so it was a test, not a test, an opportunity for both of us." She smiled, Ellen. "I've been surrounded by people who tell me what they think I want to hear for so long that I'd forgotten what genuine conversation felt like. Talking with you in the car reminded me of who I used to be before I became the Ashworth matriarch." She looked out at the garden where workers were dismantling the party decorations. "I meant what I said about the foundation. I've been thinking about it for years, but I needed someone who understood the communities we want to serve. Someone with authenticity and integrity. What about your family?" "They might not approve of your choice." Margaret laughed, a sound full of warmth and strength. "Ellen, I'm 73 years old and I've been running this family's affairs longer than some of them have been alive. They'll adjust." As if on cue, Patricia Ashworth approached us hesitantly. "Mother, I wanted to apologize to Ellen," she said carefully. "I think I may have been unwelcoming earlier. I started to tell her it wasn't necessary." But Margaret held up a hand. "Patricia, what exactly are you apologizing for?" Patricia looked uncomfortable but pressed on. "For suggesting that Ellen shouldn't have helped the server. For making her feel like she didn't belong here. And why do you think you did that?" "Because," Patricia struggled with the words, "because I was worried about appearances, about what people would think. And what should we think about someone who helps others, even at personal cost? That they have good character." Margaret nodded approvingly. "Exactly. Ellen, please accept Patricia's apology." "Of course," I said, though part of me wondered if the apology would last beyond today. As if reading my thoughts, Margaret continued, "Patricia, I'd like you to work with Ellen on the foundation project. You have connections in the community that could be valuable, and I think you could learn a lot from each other." Patricia looked surprised but nodded. "I'd be happy to help." James and Emily joined our group. And for the first time all day, I felt like we were truly a family rather than two sides trying to find common ground. "Mrs. Wilson," James said, "I hope you know how grateful I am that you raised Emily to be exactly who she is. I love her independence, her work ethic, her compassion, all the things she learned from you." "He's right, Mom," Emily added. "I spent so many years trying to distance myself from my background because I thought it made me seem less professional, less sophisticated. But you showed me today that where we come from isn't something to hide from, it's something to be proud of." 3 months later, I started my new job at the Ashworth Foundation for Educational Opportunity. My first office was bigger than my apartment, and for the first few weeks, I felt like I was playing dress-up in someone else's life. But the work was everything Margaret had promised and more. We partnered with schools throughout Los Angeles County to identify students who needed extra support. We provided scholarships, tutoring, college prep courses, and mentorship programs. Most importantly, we showed young people that their dreams were achievable, regardless of their family's economic situation. My favorite part was visiting schools and talking to students who reminded me of Emily at that age, brilliant. Determined, but convinced that college was something for other people's children. I did homework at the kitchen table while my mom worked nights. I would tell them. I watched her sacrifice everything for my education. Now I'm a lawyer, and my mom runs a foundation that helps students like you. If we could do it, you can do it too. Emily and James's wedding was held 6 months later in the same garden where we'd first met as a family. This time, I arrived in my own car, a reliable used Honda that Margaret had helped me purchase, wearing a dress I'd chosen because I loved it rather than because I thought it would impress anyone. The ceremony was beautiful, but what made it perfect was the moment during the reception when Emily pulled me aside. "Mom, I have something to tell you." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it, honey?" "James and I have been talking, and we want you to know that when we have children. We want them to call you Grandma and spend time at your apartment learning to cook your recipes and hearing stories about their mother's childhood." I started crying before she finished speaking. "We don't want them growing up only knowing the Ashworth side of their heritage," she continued. "We want them to understand where their mother came from, what their grandmother sacrificed, and why hard work and compassion matter more than money or social status. Really, really, Mom, you're not just joining our family, you're making it better." As I write this, it's been 2 years since that garden party changed my life. The foundation has helped over 500 students access educational opportunities they wouldn't have had otherwise. Patricia and I have become unlikely friends, working together on projects that are making real differences in communities across the city. Margaret and I have lunch every Tuesday, and she's become the mother I never had and the friend I never expected. She tells me stories about building a business empire while raising children in the 1960s, and I tell her about the dreams I put on hold to make sure Emily could achieve hers. But the most important change is in how I see myself. For 30 years, I believed I was invisible because the world treated me that way. I thought my value was measured by how quietly I could clean floors, how politely I could accept condescension, how well I could make myself disappear. Now I understand that I was never invisible. I was just surrounded by people who had trained themselves not to see. The qualities that made me a good mother, a reliable employee, and a caring neighbor were the same qualities that made me effective at running programs for underserved students. My experience with struggle wasn't something to hide from. It was my greatest qualification. Last month, I was invited to speak at a conference for nonprofit directors. Me, Ellen Wilson, speaking to a room full of executives and philanthropists about effective community outreach. 2 years ago, I would have been cleaning their conference room after they left. I stood at that podium looking out at an audience of people who looked nothing like me, and instead of feeling intimidated, I felt proud. Proud of the journey that had brought me there. Proud of the daughter I'd raised. Proud of the students we were helping. Proud of the woman I'd become. "My name is Ellen Wilson," I began, "and I spent 30 years working as a janitor while raising a daughter who became a lawyer. I'm here to tell you that the people you overlook every day, the ones who clean your offices, serve your food, and watch your children, have wisdom and experiences that can change the world if you're brave enough to listen." The applause that followed wasn't polite or perfunctory. It was genuine appreciation from people who were hearing a perspective they'd never considered before. After my speech, a young woman approached me. She was probably in her early 20s, dressed professionally but with the careful precision of someone who couldn't afford many outfits. "Mrs. Wilson," she said, "I'm Mary Smith. I work for the catering company that served lunch today." My heart clenched. She was so young, so hopeful, so much like I had been at her age. "I heard your speech, and I wanted to tell you I'm taking night classes at community college, business administration." I want to start my own catering company someday, but sometimes I feel like it's impossible, like I'm dreaming too big. I took her hands in mine. Mary, let me tell you something. 2 years ago, I was cleaning bathrooms and feeling invisible. Today, I run a foundation and speak at conferences. Dreams aren't too big, our belief in ourselves is too small. I gave her my business card. Call me next week. We have scholarship programs for students like you, and I know people in the food service industry who could mentor you. Her eyes filled with tears. Really? You would do that for me? Honey, that's why I do this work. To make sure young women like you know that your dreams matter. As she walked away, I thought about the chain of kindness that had brought us to this moment. Margaret stopped to help a stranger. I stopped to help someone in need. Now I was able to help Mary. Each act of compassion created ripples that spread far beyond what we could see. That evening, I called Emily to tell her about the conference. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," she said. "But I have news too. James and I found out today we're having a baby." I screamed so loudly my neighbors probably thought I was being attacked. My first grandchild, Emily's baby. A new generation that would grow up knowing both sides of their heritage, understanding that strength comes in many forms. "Do you want to know the best part?" Emily continued. "We've already decided boy or girl. Their middle name will be Ellen." This time I really did start crying. Why? Because I want them to carry part of you with them always. I want them to remember that their grandmother was a woman who never gave up, who sacrificed everything for her daughter's future, and who proved that it's never too late to change your life. Now, as I sit in my home office preparing tomorrow's presentation for a school board that wants to implement our mentorship program, I think about that broken-down Toyota on the 405 freeway. If my car hadn't overheated that day, if Margaret hadn't stopped to help, if I hadn't been brave enough to stand up for a young server at a garden party, my life would be completely different. But maybe that's not entirely true. Maybe all those moments were just waiting to happen. Maybe I'd been preparing my whole life to become the person I am now. Every floor I mopped taught me the value of honest work. Every sacrifice I made for Emily showed me the power of love. Every time I felt invisible made me more determined to see others who were being overlooked. The foundation has grown beyond anything Margaret and I originally imagined. We now operate in 5 counties, have partnerships with 37 schools, and have helped over 2,000 students access educational opportunities. But numbers don't tell the whole story. The real story is in letters like the one I received last week from Carol, a student we helped 3 years ago. "Miss Ellen, I wanted you to know that I graduated from UC Irvine yesterday with a degree in engineering. When I walked across that stage, I thought about you and how you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. My parents were in the audience crying, and they asked me to thank you for seeing possibilities they couldn't see. I start work at Boeing next month, and someday I'm going to help other kids the way you helped me." Or the email from David, whose single father worked 3 jobs while David struggled in high school. "Mrs. Wilson, I know you probably don't remember me, but you came to my school 2 years ago and talked to our senior class about college being possible for everyone. You helped me apply for scholarships and connected me with a mentor. I'm writing this from my dorm room at Cal State Northridge, where I'm studying to become a teacher. I want to work with kids from families like mine. And I want them to know what you taught me, that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. These young people are changing their families' trajectories, just like Emily changed ours. They're becoming doctors, teachers, engineers, social workers, business owners. They're raising children who will grow up believing in possibilities rather than limitations. Margaret often says that helping me was the most selfish thing she ever did, because it gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. But I know the truth. She saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. And by believing in me, she helped me become the person I was always meant to be. Last Tuesday, during our weekly lunch, she made an announcement that surprised even me. "Ellen, I've been thinking about retirement." My heart sank. Margaret was 75 now, and while she was still sharp and energetic, I knew she'd been slowing down. From the business, she clarified quickly, not from the foundation. "I want to turn over day-to-day operations of Ashworth Industries to Robert and James and spend all my time on our work." "Are you sure? The business has been your life." "No," she said firmly. "The business was my career. This work we're doing, this is my life's purpose. I spent 50 years building wealth, and now I want to spend whatever time I have left using that wealth to build opportunities for others." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Ellen, I want you to be my partner in this. Not just the program director, my equal partner. We'll expand the foundation nationally. Create programs in cities across the country. Help thousands more students achieve their dreams. Margaret, I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of responsibility." "You've been ready since the day you stopped to help a stranger on the freeway," she said. "The question is whether you believe you're ready." I thought about that frightened woman who had practiced conversations in her bathroom mirror, worried about fitting in with people who thought she wasn't good enough for their world. Then I thought about the woman I'd become, confident, purposeful, surrounded by people who valued her for who she truly was. "Yes," I said, "I'm ready. As I write this final part of my story, I'm sitting in the apartment where I raised Emily, the same place where I used to worry about paying rent and buying groceries. I could afford a bigger place now, but I choose to stay here. This is where my journey began, and I want to remember where I came from." On my kitchen table are photos from Emily and James's wedding, program brochures for our latest scholarship recipients, and ultrasound pictures of my grandchild, who will arrive in 4 months. On my refrigerator is a drawing from one of our mentorship students, showing a woman in a graduation cap with the words "Thank you for believing in me" written in crayon. Tomorrow, Margaret and I fly to Chicago to meet with school officials who want to implement our programs there. Next month, we're launching a pilot program in Phoenix that will provide college prep courses. Next year, we hope to expand to 10 more cities. But tonight, I'm having dinner with Emily and James, just like we do every Sunday. Emily is glowing with pregnancy. James is learning to cook from my recipes, and we're planning the nursery for a baby who will grow up knowing they're loved, knowing they're capable of anything, and knowing that their family's story is one of triumph over every obstacle. "Mom," Emily said last Sunday as we cleaned dishes together, "do you ever think about what would have happened if your car hadn't broken down that day?" "Every day," I told her, "but I think something would have happened eventually. Maybe not that day, maybe not that way. But something. I was ready for change, I just didn't know it yet." "What do you mean?" "I spent 30 years thinking I was lucky to have any job at all, grateful for whatever crumbs people threw my way. But deep down, I knew I was capable of more. I just needed someone to see it in me before I could see it in myself. And now, I looked around my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd helped her with homework, where I'd worried about bills, where I'd dreamed of a better life for both of us. Now it's the kitchen where I plan programs that change lives, where I prepare presentations that inspire others, where I feel proud of the journey that brought me here. Now I know that I was never the janitor who got lucky. I was always the woman who could run a foundation. I just needed the chance to prove it. My story isn't finished yet. In 4 months, I'll become a grandmother. In 6 months, we'll help our 5,000th student access higher education. In a year, who knows what possibilities will open up. But I know this. I'll never again make myself small to fit into someone else's idea of who I should be. I'll never again apologize for where I came from or doubt what I'm capable of achieving. And I'll spend the rest of my life helping other people discover their own strength, their own worth, their own possibilities. Because that's what Margaret taught me on a rainy afternoon when my car broke down and my life changed forever. We're all more capable than we know. We're all more valuable than the world sometimes makes us feel. And we're all deserving of chances to show what we can do when someone believes in us. Sometimes those chances come from unexpected directions, in the form of elegant strangers who stop to help on busy freeways. Sometimes they come disguised as humiliating moments at garden parties that turn into opportunities to stand up for what's right. But they always come when we're ready to receive them. When we're brave enough to help others, and when we're willing to believe that our dreams might not be too big after all. My name is Ellen Wilson. I used to be invisible, but now I help others shine. And if you're listening to this story feeling invisible yourself, remember, you're not unseen. You're just waiting for the right moment to step into the light.
Thank you for watching, for listening, and for sharing this time with me. If you enjoyed this journey, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. Until next time, take care, and keep cherishing the chapters of your life.